details. A lot of sharks out there.
Look, I don't know. Apparently, the Sea Devil is supposed to be saying quiet, but it sounds like something else. Sounds like something else. But yeah, the Sea Devils are savages. Army Hearties! Oh god, I'm not doing that as an intro. Hello Whovians, Crispy Pro here, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you found us okay. Thanks for sticking around, really do appreciate you. Today we are talking about the Legend of the Sea Devils, the Easter special for 2022. Was it good? Was it bad? What was it? What was that? All your questions will be answered today, so strap yourselves in, it's going to be a crazy ride. But before we get into it, hey, you know what I'm about to say, please consider liking this video, it does help the algorithm a lot, and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. We are trying to reach 30,000 subscribers, and if we hit that, I will fly to the moon for the channel. Yep. And of course, I have a Doctor Who podcast called Who's There? A Doctor Who Podcast, and you should definitely check it out. It's very funny. It's very, very funny indeed. Oh, and we're going to have a full review of this episode, full hour-long review of this episode coming out this Saturday, so go and check it out, guys. You don't want to miss it. You don't. I'm talking to you. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about this episode. There's some good, there's some bad. There is some bad, unfortunately. But you know what? I'll start with the good and we'll get to the bad, okay? The things I liked, for the most part, I thought the visual effects in this episode were exceptional, bar a few questionable shots, like what the heck is this Super Mario jump going on here? I mean, it looks great, but I didn't know the Sea Devils had that, you know, basketball hop. But I mean, one consistent for the Jodie era is definitely how good the visual effects look, and the direction, for the most part, is usually handled very, very well. And I thought this episode was particularly pretty. There were a few strange directing decisions we'll touch on later, but for the most part, I thought it was a visually pleasing episode. And coming from someone that studied film and now is working kind of in the industry, you know, I really do appreciate that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into making these productions, so I can appreciate that, and I think you can too. But the best part for me, you know, the highlight of the episode for me was how they handled the Thasmin stuff, because it could have gone very, very different ways, because we finally got confirmation in Eve of the Daleks that, you know, Yasmin definitely had feelings for the Doctor. We weren't sure if that was going to be reciprocated or not, and I wasn't even sure if they were going to bring it up this episode, which I would have been kind of disappointed if they didn't. But it was definitely sprinkled in multiple scenes very, very prominently. It was the emotional tie of the episode. And I think they handled it really delicately in the way that I wanted them to handle it. Like, it's beautiful, it got me excited. But I was very worried because there was a show recently that, I don't want to spoil anything, but they were accused of queer baiting, and I don't think Doctor Who necessarily falls within that category. I mean, we'll have to see how things pan out in the Centenary special, but I do not think that's the case for Doctor Who. I think both Jodie and Mandip's performances in this episode were sensational, and probably the highlight for me, absolutely. They absolutely crushed it. It's probably one of my favorite Jodie acting performances this episode. And same with Mandip, like, she has been a very, very underrated companion. Like, I remember back in 2018, I made a video being like, I don't like this companion. I don't know what they're trying to do with her. I'm not really for it. But now, you know, she's up there with some of my favorites, because I'm like, oh, they finally got a backbone and are doing something with this character that I very much like, and very much, it seems good. Seems like the right thing to do. Sorry, I'm getting very, very passionate here, but you know, that's what Doctor Who does to me. The best scene, 100%, was the end scene on the beach. That was fantastic and very well acted. And I loved, just from a visual standpoint, the underwater TARDIS shot. And that entire sequence I thought was stunning and really well acted and well done. And this was also my first introduction to the Sea Devils. And I thought they were great. I thought they were really well done. I love the practical nature of them. They looked very goofy, but I mean, that's Doctor Who. That's kind of what you come to expect. And they had like little CGI touch-ups here and there. You kind of see them like breathing and the eyes blinking and moving. It was very good. It was very Doctor Who, and I love that kind of stuff. I thought the guest cast did a very good job. I saw a lot of people complaining that, you know, it really didn't spend much time on Madam Ching, and yes, while I would have liked them to spend more time on Madam Ching Pirate Queen, this episode wasn't really marketed as like a Madam Ching episode. I mean, the episode wasn't really marketed full stop, but that's a different story. Yeah, the episode wasn't really marketed as a Madam Ching story, so I wasn't too fazed by how little we got of her, but what we did get, I thought she did a really good job, and I thought the guest cast were very good. It didn't feel as convoluted as other Chibnall stories, and I really appreciated that. Alright, enough with the good stuff. I do have a few gripes with this episode. You know, unfortunately, no episode of Doctor Who is perfect, and this episode is no exception. And we'll start off with one of my favorite things to point out in the Chibnall era is, why can they never get the titling right. I just feel like for a tenure that is so visually pleasing, they've never been able to get the on-screen titles quite right. You know? I don't know, maybe that's just me, I just don't like the way this looks. But maybe it's just personal preference, I don't know. That's very minute, I've got bigger criticisms, don't worry. And while we're on very small criticisms, the Planky didn't make an appearance in this episode at all, and that was very, very sad. The Doctor did not walk the Planky. So, there you go. Some of the direction in this episode felt a little off, and I don't want to be too harsh because I'm pretty sure this is the first time this director, can't remember the name, has directed a Doctor Who episode, and for the most part, very, very good. But sometimes characters just ended up in different places without any explanation as to how they got there. Like Dan all of a sudden just kind of splits from the group without kind of like having a conversation with Jodie and Mandip. Like, I don't know, it kind of felt clunky. I knew we were in for a kind of clunky episode, like right from the get-go, when like Yaz and Dan just magically get out this net from nowhere, like from absolutely nowhere, like right at the start. You're like, oh, that kind of took me by surprise. You know, they could have set up at the start that maybe Yaz and Dan were going fishing with a net or something. They had it on him, but no, they just happened to be in this town that already had a pre-set up trap. You know, it feels a little clunky. And speaking of Dan, he really didn't get that much to do this episode, which is a shame because, you know, we have one episode left with him now. He does definitely always bring the humor, and that's always good to see. But I just kind of wish they did a little bit more with him. But I guess, you know, this isn't really his story. It's more of the Doctor and Yaz's story, so I can kind of understand. But the one thing I did really like that I didn't mention was the conversation he had with his misso that I can't remember the name of now. Di is her name? Doctor Who Flux. Gosh, call yourself a Who-tuber. You don't even know your bloody characters, mate. Come on. Diane, that's her name. I thought that was a really, really nice conclusion because at the end of Vanquishers, I'll say it now, I wasn't really the biggest fan of Vanquishers, a lot of you guys know that. I kind of didn't like how they ended things with Diane. Like, I understand that she'd kind of be put off Dan, being like, oh, you know, the universe kind of ended and you were involved in that, but you know, it's not really his fault. So I'm glad that they're kind of setting up a resolution for his character and her character. I thought that was quite nice. And one thing that also really bugged me is in the episode they made a point to not try and kill the Sea Devils. Like one of the characters just straight up kills the Sea Devil and the Doctor does the typical thing, be like, hey, you didn't have to kill it, alright? Mate? That's a very Doctor reaction, that's a very Doctor thing to do. But then in one scene, Dan just straight up one swipe goes, bang, bang, bang! Boom, boom, boom! And it's all for like a joke, being like, oh, you know, I got that from my mum or something. And whilst funny, you're kind of like, well, they just set up in the episode that, you know, we're trying not to kill these Sea Devils, so I don't know, man. But the biggest criticism I have of this episode is the runtime. It was 47 minutes long. What's up with that, guys? This is a special episode. Market it as a special episode. Come on, guys, give us an hour, please. And I feel like having, you know, an extra 10 minutes or so to this episode would have probably padded out some of the scenes that we needed, like how did Dan get here? How did the Doctor get here? So a little bit less clunkiness and a little bit more cohesion. But hey, I don't make the rules. Yet. But yeah, unfortunately, this episode did just feel very, like, run-of-the-mill, very, like, mid-series. I'm pretty sure this episode was intended to be part of Series 13, but because of the whole pandemic and everything, the flux was made, and this episode was kind of moved to the side and made into a special. So, there you go. So, with all that said, my final rating for Legend of the Sea Devils, the 2022 Doctor Who Easter Special, I will give a 6.5 out of 10. It wasn't bad, but I just think ultimately it won't be that memorable. But hey, those are just my silly thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to read your opinions. I've seen some people saying that this is an incredible episode, best episode of Doctor Who ever, and I've seen some people saying that it's the worst episode of Doctor Who ever, so I bet you're somewhere in there. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them, reply, and give them a weird little heart react thing. And as always, please like this video, please subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you next week where we're going to talk some leaked Centenary stuff. Oh boy, that trailer. Let's just talk about that trailer for a second. That trailer was unreal. Is she regenerating there? I don't think so. But yeah, anyway, have an awesome day. Like and sub. I'll talk to you soon. Allons-y! Oh, and listen to the podcast. Yeah, haha. Too much to say at the end. Anyway, I don't know when to shut up. I just did. Nice. Silence is bliss, isn't it? Anyway, allons-y!